This is NHL Wraparound Quick Takes and another edition of Spring Cleaning, wrapping up teams that did not make the Stanley Cup playoffs in 2026. The Nashville Predators were eliminated on April 13th. Neil, our expectation for the Preds was relatively low coming off 24-25. They had made major free agent signings, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea. And the end result was they finished 7th in the Central, 14th in the Pacific, and 30th overall. And the question being posed to Barry Trotz at that point was whether or not he was just kind of writing this off as a bad season because there weren't a lot of changes going into the summer of 2025 and then coming out of it into training camp.
No, they didn't make a lot of changes this summer, and so our expectations for them were very low considering how they'd played last season. I think that Barry was trying to do a one-year thing and try to sign these free agents while he accumulated young players and young assets. He really didn't have a lot when he took over as GM because David Poile had spent a lot of the future, a lot of the assets staying in the playoffs year after year. If you remember when David Poile had the team was almost always in the playoffs, and in fact, one year went to the final. But this year, with nothing coming in the summer and only last year to reflect on, our expectations were pretty low for them.
So the reality was that 25-26 started out much like 24-25. They were 6-12-4 after an 8-3 home loss against Florida on November the 24th. There were calls for Andrew Brunette, the head coach, to be fired. Would Steven Stamkos or Ryan Reilly get traded? And then in the next 49 games, they go 28-16-5. And after beating San Jose on March the 24th, which was the last of a 5-game winning streak, they actually had a 3-point lead on the Kings for the second wild card in the West, but then finished 4-6-1 in the final 11 and eventually missed the playoffs. So a year of, I think, progress, but I think also more a year that this is where we kind of expected them to be a year ago. And even then, I think they probably fell short of that because if you remember, in the summer of 24, they were already being handed the Stanley Cup after those free agent signings.
Well, certainly by the Nashville Predators fans they were, but they hung around this year after having that good sprint in that 49 games that you talk about. They hung around and they made life miserable for the LA Kings. You know that because it was always teeter-tottering back and forth between Nashville and the Kings. But then eventually, as the schedule would dictate, the Preds fell out of it and the Kings kept going and grabbed that wild card spot and the privilege of playing against a Colorado Avalanche.
On the plus side for this team, Steven Stamkos and Philip Forsberg both reached 40 goals. Ryan O'Reilly went from 53 to 74 points. Luke Evangelista, fourth in team scoring with 56 points. And they also got 17 goals from rookie Matthew Wood. On the downside, Marchessault dropped from 56 to 31 points. And Fedor Svechkov, who we were looking to take a step up in his second season in the NHL, second consecutive 17-point season, despite playing 18 more games this year. So with that, Barry Trotz has a very interesting summer coming up. The team has 12 picks in the 2026 draft. That's the most in the league, along with Calgary and St. Louis. Trotz has not found a replacement yet. I mean, there are names that have been out there, but it certainly looks like heading into the summer, it's going to be Trotz to run this thing.
Well, there's a lot of rumors out there about other people coming in, a lot of assistant GMs. Tom Fitzgerald, who used to be there quite a number of years back, who just was let go by the New Jersey Devils, is one of the top candidates to go there. My guess is we're still only in April. I think by the time the draft comes around, they'll have a new GM in place. And of course, that GM will have his own idea of what they need and what direction to go.
Well, as we mentioned, they're going to have an abundance of riches, at least in terms of the number of selections that they're going to have at this year's draft. They have 2 in the second round, their own, and a pick that they got in the Gustav Nyquist deal. They have 2 in the 3rd round, their own, and a pick that's owned by Seattle. 2 in the 4th round, their own, and a pick owned by Pittsburgh. And 3 in the 5th round, their own, and picks owned by Edmonton and Carolina. That Hurricanes pick coming in the Mark Jankowski deal. The Predators have $7.2 million in projected cap space. Their UFAs, forwards Eric Haula and Tyson Jost, and their lone RFA of significance, defenseman Justin Barron, who played 52 games for Nashville in this past season. So as we start to look and unpack this a little bit, all of the big guns, the big names for the Predators, have contracts that will extend beyond next season, with the exception of Steven Stamkos, that of course includes Captain Roman Josi. So there is the ability to build and keep this team intact for the new season and perhaps improve upon the steps that they made in the latter part of 25-26.
But for now, they can't keep depending on Steven Stamkos and Philip Forsberg to get them 40 goals each and try to get them in the playoffs that way. They've got to get some contributions from young players. They did get that from Luke Evangelista this year, who's 4th in scoring. But they're going to have to develop more players, more young players. They're going to have to see things coming. And again, this will be the architecture of the new architect, which will be someone we don't know coming in to replace Barry Trotz.